Morning, Ger. How are things?
A week is a long time in GAA. It was last Monday that Michael Duignan essentially excoriated the GAA. It was a carpet bomb of problems, and by Friday, the county board chairman were all being told, right, listen, we've changed our mind here by the powers that be in Croke Park. So what's your take on what happened last week?
Um, you'd like to believe that they were just kind of going to get around to it, but I think it's a typical situation, Jeremy. We've seen this over and over as the years have gone past. Anytime there's any grey area at all, and anytime there's any kind of wiggle room with something, someone will find a gap and someone will have a go at it. And the week previous or the week and a half previous, when Tom Ryan said, we're not getting to that. Today's about setting out a plan, but we won't get to sanctions, etc. I just kind of, I was just like, oh, well, here we go. It's only going to take a matter of time until something happens, and that they're really exposed by a player getting COVID or a relation of that player or whatever it was. And then it would all come down to, well, were they playing with their club? Were they playing with the county? Were the inter-county team training? Where were they training? And it would have just opened a kind of a myriad of problems for them. So it was good to see them react. I think Duignan, obviously, Michael was very forthright. He's obviously well respected in the echelons of Croke Park, I would imagine, and obviously his profile with RTE, I'm sure, helped. And the way I suppose he just spoke, he spoke. He's a county board chairman now. He's a guy who spoke about it just at the grassroots and the situations. And county boards, I think a lot of county boards, and let's not go there, but county boards and club officials, they want a lot of the decisions taken out of their hands. They want governance from the main authority. They want governance from the people who are being paid to give that governance. And they want people to say, okay, here are the red lines. If you cross the line, here's the sanction. This is how much it's going to cost, or this is the penalty that's going to be imposed. And please do not cross it. So they don't want this, situation where there's, as I said, kind of flowery language, and the county boards have to put their hands up themselves, or they're waiting on someone, looking in over the wall of a training session to try and, tell some tales on a particular inter-county team. So it was good to see the reaction. I'm still a little bit skeptical though, and I doubt I would be very surprised if we saw any sanctions actually take place, to be honest, because I think it may be kind of like just putting it out there. And hopefully all inter-county teams are abiding by it. But if there's, I've seen a few different things over the weekend on Twitter and various different stuff where people are saying, oh, they know for sure the teams are training collectively. Look, is it going to be someone that has to get video proof? What are the sanctions? I know they're meant to come out with a statement, I think, this week to actually say what they are. But, I don't know how they actually impose the things, and I don't know how much evidence they need to then go and impose it. So I think there's still a lot of kind of woolly stuff going on, but at least the threat of it is there, and that might curtail things a bit.
Well, this is not something that has not existed before, Anthony. Like the GAA have come out to try and combat things like training camps abroad, training before Christmas, and that sort of thing. Those things have been skirted in the past. The punishment clearly hasn't been severe enough to deter everybody from doing that. What will the punishment need to be to deter all county teams from training before September 14th?
Yeah, it's a good point, Owen. And that kind of that helps my healthy dose of skepticism this morning over the last week, the weekend since it was announced. I think maybe I think the whole situation around COVID obviously changes things a bit, and the insurance. And I'm no insurance expert, but the fallout from a case that may end up being really bad, or as I said, a relation of some inter-county player, and if they're able to trace it back and say, okay, it occurred within an inter-county panel, and you were collectively training and the evidence was there, I think that would be a scary enough situation for a county to be in. It would be a scary enough situation for a county board to expose themselves and to allow themselves and the county to be in. So I think there's obviously a human kind of factor that probably wasn't there, say, in kind of training camps and holiday camps and all this kind of stuff. So there is a different slant. There's a health factor, there's a human factor in it, and I think there really has been a lot of airtime over the last kind of couple of weeks with regards to the club, the county, the allotted time. And there's a lot of focus on it now. So, I think the first manager or the first county that are exposed to this will feel pretty isolated, I would imagine, and hopefully it just won't happen.
Look, that's the best case scenario here for everybody, that everybody who had been training up to this point goes, okay, fair enough, that's serious. We're calling a halt to this because we actually see the sanctions that are there. There is presumably quite significant lessons to be learned from everything that's happening at the moment. You can have a separate intercounty and club season. You maybe could have a scenario where in next season, if you were to take some of the lessons forward, where one night a week you would release the players to train during the club season with the intercounty team, but the rest of the time they're club players, and then the club season is run off over a 8 or 10 week period, and then after that everybody's free to go and play intercounty, and then when you get knocked out you're actually in an off season.
Well, would you believe there actually is a different way? It's amazing. It only took a global pandemic to show us that there's actually, there's enough time in the calendar year to fit all this in. Who would have thought it? Like club players, I'd say, are chomping at the bit because it's going to be run off very quickly. There's a path laid out for them. They know when it's going to start. They know when it's going to end. I'd say they're happy out, albeit the different procedures that have to take place and everything else, and there's a bit more inconvenience and all that stuff. But if anything has been shown in the last kind of 3 to 4 months with this, it is the fact that it is possible. It is absolutely 100% possible to split the season, to do whatever needs to be done to alleviate the pressure both on club and inter-county players, and to give them a definitive fixture list, a definitive time frame, a definitive season, be it 3 months for the clubs, 4 months for the inter-county, or whatever it is. Give them downtime, and then when you do all that, it goes back to what we were just speaking about, is the governance of it, and making sure then that there's sanctions in place, that there isn't this creep that happens every year. Teams start a little bit earlier, or a club team start a little bit earlier, or inter-county teams start a bit earlier. Just bang, have it definitive. Say, listen, there's going to be sanctions. If we find out you're doing collective training, blah, 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 you'll be hit with this, or you'll be hit with that, or you'll get penalised for league points, or whatever it is. And just set it in stone. Just have it in stone. You can have training camps at certain times of the year. I saw Colin Collins talking last week, and he's right. And even Mike Quirk was saying there has to be a maturity around this. And for the inter-county manager, the maturity around it is that they actually go to the club managers and they say, okay, fellas, what are you doing with your clubs? We'd like you to do this. Or what are you doing with your teams? We'd like you to do this. Here's our S&C guy. He would like to talk to your S&C people if you have them in place. Because the problem with an inter-county manager, and I can imagine if I was in the same situation, is that you'd have some teams who are doing it really right, so some players are getting exposed to that, but you might have some teams that aren't doing it as well, and that some players just aren't kind of keeping up with the levels they should be keeping up. You would hope that if a guy is on an inter-county panel, that he has enough self-discipline and enough self-drive that he wants to do things as best he can, regardless if he's in a club situation that isn't really maybe doing that. So communication, trust between club, inter-county manager, county board, and the hierarchy of the GAA, that trust has to be there. And as I said, and you rightly point out, Ger, the last couple of weeks, I hope it's not a missed opportunity. I really do, because this year is going to be whatever, right? It's going to be. Let's hope everything stays as is, and it does go on, and that there's not a surge and stuff, and that things aren't shut down again. Let's just hope that we get a positive kind of sensitive curve, and we keep moving on, and then the season happens. But there is an enormous opportunity falling out of this that next season and the seasons thereafter could be massively different and could be just so much more, concise, could be just so much more efficient, and so much more fit for purpose.
It seems that the key, Anthony, here is that the club is going first. That, like, perhaps it seems like such a simple point, but perhaps it's gone underappreciated here that the club is getting out first. And no matter what sort of championship structure that's been thrown out in the past, you can come up with a million different things. But perhaps the key point to all of it is that the club gets out before the county, and therefore that ridiculous extension of the season with these long pre-seasons will no longer exist, because your pre-season, if you're looking at it from a purely elite standpoint, from an inter-county level, can be the club season. And as you say, if you've got the information coming from the paid people involved with inter-county teams and to bestow their knowledge upon the clubs, then everybody is a winner.
Absolutely, Owen. And I think, if you're standing still, you're going backwards. So every single club, certainly intermediate and senior club, and an awful lot of junior clubs, there's so much information out there that players, and it really has to be player led. I see a lot of stuff where players and people, they want to blame managers, or they want to blame this, they want to blame that. Like, at the end of the day, if your team isn't performing or isn't getting to a level where you want them to get to, you're on the team, you're an adult, so you should be asking questions, you should be trying to drive it on yourself, you should be trying to get a cohort of players to up their own standards, if that's whatever it is. So standards will always begin at the club level, and if you have a really healthy club scene, and the competition is massively improved there, and you're having great battles at the club level, be it junior, intermediate, senior, as it goes up the curve, your inter-county team should benefit. So the whole thing has to be arranged around that. People have to get that into their mindset. A lot of club players, and I saw it when I was with the CPA, there's a lot of finger pointing, but then when it comes down to action and it comes down to asking a lot of people to do something, it's kind of like, well, that's not my fight, or I won't really make a difference. It's kind of like, voting. There's an apathy there, and unfortunately, that can't happen. If you want change to happen, yes, of course it should come from the top table, and you would hope it would come from the executive in the GAA, and you would hope that the last number of months has shown them that there is an acceptance. Like this kind of worry about, oh, well, what if Leinster would, the Leinster Council would give out if we scrap the Leinster Championship, the Ulster Council would give out. Well, you know what? You're going to have to break eggs. It's just going to happen. If things don't change, they're going to stay the same. So things are going to have to change. There's going to be sacred cows that are going to have to be slaughtered. You're going to have to get to a point where it becomes, as I said, because you can't deal within the same framework. That cannot happen. And you would hope that the last number of months, they talk about, going to get the 2/3 majority and all that stuff at Congress. Like, really, if the top table and the boys really say, listen, this is the way we're going to go with this, well, then everyone else will row in. Yes, there'll be rumblings, but they'll get their majority. It happens nearly all the time.
That's it. That's it,
Sorry?
isn't it? That is exactly the point. That you just need a shared vision for what the future looks like, and that's where that's the whole point of this whole thing, is that the leadership has to come from somebody, from somewhere. And to be honest, that's why when we had Michael Duignan on last week, the next day we wrote this up as this is what a template for a president, for a manifesto should be, because it was kind of in the absence of a manifesto for change that this one was delivered almost like the Sermon on the Mount. We should do this, we should do this. We should not ask players to be hypocrites. We're asking them to be leaders, and we're asking them also at the same time to lie about the fact that they're breaking rules and training secretly. What kind of people are we creating when we're asking them to be liars and cheats? And Micheál Brodie called it cheating in Midwest Radio yesterday, and he's right. But that's the point. And I think you might have said it was the people who are getting paid to do this. If they come up with a template that says club first for 2 months, inter-county season for 3 months, or club first 3 months, inter-county season for 2.5 months, championship, away we go. Everybody be happy, right?
Absolutely, 100%. Like, the last couple of months, lockdown, people's sense of freedom being, taken away from them. The freedom to just leave their house, walk out their front door, and go and do whatever they wanted to do. That has, whether people know it or not, that has, dropped into people's psyches now, and it's in there, and it's in there forevermore. So the freedoms that people enjoy, the simple small little things that previously they would have just taken for granted, they are now. Some people might be more in tune with it and might really feel that, wow, going to a GAA match, even just going down to the local pitch and standing there at the wire and looking in at, the young lads and just watching them play for an hour and 15 minutes. Whereas before that might have just been something you do without necessarily thinking about it. Now that's something big, and for some people, as I say, that will be more to the front of their mind, and others it will just be accepted that that's what they do. But I think more and more you're getting people realize that this thing can be done better, and that the days of saying, oh well, it's someone else's issue, and no, there's a lot of problems there and we can't really get around it, that's gone. So the time is rife now for change. Like, the time is absolutely set for someone to take this by the balls, excuse my language, but just to go and grab it and say, look, this is the way we're going to do it. There has to be a better way. If anything the last 4 months has shown is that things can be absolutely turned on their head. Work life, home life, whatever way you want to do it, entertainment, social, the way you have social gatherings, it's all changed now. It's changed. Maybe it has changed forever. Maybe it has just changed for a couple of years. I don't know. But out of a crisis comes opportunity. Here is the opportunity to take this now, to as you say, Ger, stop this innuendo and stop this kind of, now listen, fellas, whatever goes in the camp stays in the camp. You can't talk about what we're doing. As you say, nearly making players have to lie, being secretive about stuff. Just be upfront, be honest. Take the thing and say, right, this is the way we're going to do it. Yes, there's going to be people's noses put out of joint, but you know what? There'll be people putting noses put out of joint anyway. It doesn't make a difference. Yes, there'll be someone giving out. It won't be a panacea. It won't be the absolute solution. Like, the CPA have been calling for this for 3 or 4 years now. Like the blue in their face calling for it. Thankfully, there's a groundswell of opinion now, and the GAA have to tap into that. My one real, grudge sometimes with the executive GAA is that they react an awful lot. They kind of send it out there. They see how the ground is moving, and then they go, okay, well, we'll go with that side. So, for example, last week, it took Dignan to come out and do that. It took a lot of media kind of exposure to kind of say, well, we have to sanction here, instead of getting ahead of it. Get ahead of it, say, okay, no, this is what we're going to do, and we're really going to make some significant change for 2021 and beyond. And as you say, it's a manifesto that I think an awful lot of people will get behind. It won't be right year one, but you know what? It will be a hell of a lot better than what has gone on before. And
the other thing is that if you make changes and they're not right immediately, there will be definitely people who say, oh, that's it, rip it up, go back. But those people are fewer and fewer in Irish life now. It turns out that we are actually tending towards a progressive view of life where maybe it's a little bit better and we can row in behind that change, and maybe we can iterate it and make it even better the year after.
Well, there is one thing that we are pretty good at, especially in the GAA, and that's tinkering. We've tinkered for a long number of years. We stick in a little added rule here and addendum to something. So we'll have no problem, tinkering with something. But I think that the core beliefs have to change, and the core principles have to change. And to go back to Owen's point, everything is born from the club. You're a club player before you're an inter-county player. You learn your trade in the club. My point, which is probably badly made, is that the clubs around the country, and the GAA have to take massive credit for something that has happened over the last 20 odd years, which is that you could drive to any old town in Ireland and you could see probably a really, really good GAA club with maybe a little stand, nice dressing rooms. When I started out, it's some time ago. It's longer than I would have hoped, but there was loads of places where you go and you get tugged out in the car, or you get tugged out on the side of the road, or you get tugged out in the prefab or whatever it is. Whereas now most GAA clubs, be them junior, senior, intermediate, have beautiful facilities. The next thing for them now is that it pushes on, and that we actually have a situation where the standards are improving at the club. Fellas are taking responsibility. Clubs themselves are taking responsibility, and they're demanding that the game change. And you can see that happening. They're demanding that things change. Communication, as I said, between the club, between the players, between the county board, between the inter-county manager, a realization that everyone is moving in the same direction, which is what ultimately that the inter-county team achieve, be it a senior All-Ireland or whatever it is, whatever that goal is, but that the standards improve all the way. Now, if the standards are improving at club level and within the actual structures of the GAA, you would really, really hope that the standards are improving at the top level. And therefore, if I'm a paid individual being paid whatever amount of money to come up with really, really good structures and policies that are going to help the game, not hinder the game, help it, move it into the next century, move it onto the next level, take account of the fact that players are more educated, managers are more educated, county boards are more educated, take into account the fact that people have other things to do, that there's a lot of pressures coming on younger people, and that people might be pulled here and there, and also take into account all the various different surveys that have been done over the last 10 or 15 years, which says that the playing population is decreasing. How do I arrest that? How do I stop it? Well, let's put in a game, and let's put in a fixture schedule, and let's put in a game that's attractive to play and not a hindrance to play. Let's have something that fellas are dying to get out there and play for 3 months of the year, 4 months of the year, or whatever it is, rather than kind of going, oh, here we go, another year of season, and I don't know where I'm going to be.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate goal.
Yeah, and I actually, you would hope that we're on the verge of some kind of shared understanding of that, and if we get there, then anything is possible. Anthony, great to have you with us this morning. Thanks a million for joining us.
No bother, lads. Take it easy.
Anthony Moyles there giving us some thoughts on the current situation in the GAA. If you want to get in touch with us, 0879 180 180.